All right, good morning, and thank you all for joining us today for our fourth virtual coffee with the principal. Like our other sessions, we will record this, post it up on our YouTube channel for folks that miss it or are so bored they want to watch it twice, but we will have that available for you. We also did get a request to put some notes out, so we will do that. So those of you who prefer the Cliff Note version over me, we will have some notes on some things we talked about today. We have really four items on our agenda. We want to update you on the things that are happening at SPU. Even though the buildings are closed, we're still pretty active, and I wanted to tell you what's going on there. I want to give you some information on some considerations and conditions that we would need to get school opened up again. I know that's the main topic of everyone's discussion. We want to talk to you a little bit about the status of our distance learning program, and then, as always, answer any questions that you may have. So we wanted to start up with a little update on SPU happenings. We've been quite busy despite the building being closed. On Monday, we had a very sad day at SPU. We distributed students' belongings, so everything from pens and papers and pencils and books to stuffed animals and pillows and everything that kids have brought to school. That has a whole different feel in the middle of April than it does at the beginning of June. And it was pretty sad to see those things go out. But we did that not because it's 100% confirmed that school will not be reopened, but it was students' belongings, and it was also students' learning tools. So we wanted to make sure that kids had what they needed to do their at-home learning. And so we distributed that. We probably got about 75 to 80% of all student supplies out. We still have probably about 50 bags or so that are sitting in the library. So if your kid has some belongings at school, let us know. We can help you get those checked out during our curbside library on Wednesday. So if there's some belongings here at the school you're missing, reach out to us and we can get them back to you. Tuesday night, we had our very first virtual board meeting. So we thank those of you who were able to join us. If you missed it and you want to be part of how our governance is working, the next one is on May 12th. I'd like to say we're very fortunate to have a board that is so connected to our school, especially during a time like this. Everyone on the board has had kids come through the school. Most have kids that are currently in the school, and they've been connected to the point that they can provide some really good guidance and make some good decision making, understanding what you guys are all going through. So we're very fortunate with that. Yesterday was the third installation of our curbside library. Mrs. Carroll and her book warriors have been very diligent about taking your book requests and having books ready for your kids out in front of the school. So if you haven't participated in that, we are having the next one on Wednesday from 12 to 2, a new time. But email her by Monday with book requests or questions about books, and we'll have those out ready for you. So she's been doing that. And then our ASB is ramping up again under Mrs. McGill's guidance. Today and tomorrow, our ASB students will be voting on their 2020-21 ASB officers. So if you have a 5th through 7th grader, make sure that we will vote on those officers, and then those will be announced next week. The Spirit is running a Spirit Week, and that Spirit Week is going to be next week with the theme of Quarantine, TEAM, and they will have dress-up days and contests and encouraging kids to submit pictures that we can post through social media. Try to bring a little normalcy and fun and connection to kids. So look for our Spirit Week next week. Our PTO is still active. Our PTO is still putting together yearbooks. They're working on ways to do virtual signatures and get pictures of homeschooling and that kind of stuff. So take a look at the information we'll share to you later today of the PTO and the yearbook. Really fortunate to have such a great foundation. They were super disappointed that they ended up postponing their gala from this spring to the following spring because of social distancing requirements. But they still donated to the school 100 Chromebooks that are now in hand and being used for distance learning. And so if you look at those kids that are active and homeschool, a lot of that is thanks to the foundation. To this point, we have distributed 200 devices overall. A bunch of them, like I said, half of them the foundation's donation, but we also donated about another 100 devices out. The foundation is currently planning a fall event, probably a golf tournament, but we'll keep you posted on that. But they are looking to make sure that the sponsors to the event are recognized. So you'll see some signs going up acknowledging the folks that are supporting our foundation. There was a question that came in about the board meeting. They wanted to know, is the board meeting posted anywhere to view? And so if you go on our main website under the district tab, you will see the governing board and you will see the agenda and all the documentation that was posted. The minutes to those meetings trail by a month. So if you have some specific questions as to what was decided, feel free to reach out. But the minutes usually get approved at the next board meeting. So we'll see those minutes be approved in May. But all that information is on there. The next thing I want to talk to you guys about was the returning to school, because the $24,000 question, $64,000 question, whatever dollar you want to put to that, is when are we coming back? And I wish I had the answer. But I can tell you I am more hopeful than I've been for a while. What we're getting right now from health leaders, from government leaders, from education officials, is that there is some evidence of the curve flattening, and there's a great desire to try to get back to normal. And so what if you've been following a little bit in the news, there are some areas and some sectors that are opening up. Here in San Diego, there's been a little opening of open spaces and some talk just this morning of getting the beaches open. So that's really encouraging. It's encouraging for us as we move forward. I can tell you schools and kids won't be at the front of that opening line. The kids will not be the ones who are put at the greatest risk at the beginning. We'll learn a little bit as things open up. We'll take the lead of how we can do so safely. But right now it's important to make sure that we do put kids' safety first and foremost. And the short answer to when we're going to open up is when schools are safe enough to do so. Most likely that's going to be in the fall. The kind of realistic scenario that we're looking at is kids kept in distance learning probably till the end of this year. If conditions permit them coming back, we would bring them back, but most likely till the end of this year. We're currently looking at learning opportunities over the summer. We know that distance learning isn't any of your first choices, and there will be some kids that thrive and some kids that struggle. So we're looking at some options for the summer, and those options will depend in large part as to what we're permitted to do. If we can bring small groups of kids together, that would be preferable. If we need to continue the distance learning, that will be offered, but we'll know a little bit more as we move through. And then we are fully anticipating that schools will open in the fall, but look different. There's a lot of speculation as to what that could be. There's talk about coming back the way it was, that things have moved far enough that kids can be close together. There's speculation about hybrid models where there's part home, part school, flexible schedules. Talk about smaller classes so that kids could be distanced a little bit more, kind of a return to old school rows, but farther apart. Altered school day within school day schedules, possibly longer or multiple lunch periods, recess, those kind of things to keep kids apart. Possibility of less adults on campus, depending on what the restrictions on the number of people and who's accessing. So a lot of that's speculative now, and the only reason I share it with you is it's part of our planning considerations, because our goal is to get your kids back at school and to keep them safe, and those are the things that we're looking at doing to do so. There's going to be a point when it's okay to come back to school, but some people may not want to. Some people may find that this environment has been great for their kids, and we're looking at trying to find a flexible blended model so that if this is a model that works really well for your kids or some of your kids, that we can offer. And the truth of the matter is some folks, even if the clearance has been given that it's safe to come back, will be hesitant to do so. Either the child or you guys will be concerned that you might not want to be sending your kids back to school. And so we're looking at some flexible models to accommodate if there's some fear and apprehension in that, and how do we continue to support kids. So a lot of speculative things, but what I can tell you is the things that we know right now. We know that most kids in San Diego start their distance learning program on Monday. You guys have been doing it for 5 weeks, and some of you have expressed concerns that my child might be falling behind or might be disadvantaged by this. Like I said, the ideal learning environment was the one that we had set up before we sent everybody home. But just know that comparatively, your kids have had about a month head start as opposed to most. And we feel that in that time, we've been able to focus on the social emotional needs of kids, make sure that they're safe, but also not forget about their education. I've been really impressed that our teachers have been doing an amazing job. I couldn't be more proud of them, and I hope you're having a similar experience. We jumped right into this. Teachers had a very kid-centered, focused approach. They were really thoughtful about all the kids' needs, about family needs, and my experience is they've been responsive. So hopefully you're finding that same experience with you and your kids. Created to recognize some of this work that our teachers have been doing. Our very first Vinspirational Employee of the Month, or of the week. Those of you who've been around the school for a little bit know that we've had the Inspirational Employee of the Week, and that's somebody that has inspired others to do better. As we've shifted to this distance learning, we've really taken a team approach so that we can best serve kids through team models. And for those of you who have middle schoolers, you can attest to the fact that about a week ago, last Tuesday, when we moved to a more accountable model, the middle school team got together and did orientations for the kids throughout the day and an orientation with the parents at night. And there was two main themes that came out of that. First of all, there were parents that were very appreciative of all the efforts that were being done and how their kids were being served. And then there were parents that felt very overwhelmed. They expressed some concerns to say, hey, I need this simplified a little bit so I can partner with you. And over the course of that first week, they simplified 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to one-page documents that should make it easier for you to follow. And we were very impressed with their responsiveness to parents' needs and desires and creating a program that you truly could understand and support. And so we had recognized our middle school team as our Inspirational Employees of the Week on Tuesday night. So hopefully you're having that same experience. If you're not, reach out to your teachers or reach out to me and let me know. Like I said, well-being is our top priority for our students, but that doesn't mean that we're not holding work. And there have been a lot of questions to me to say, okay, well, what does that accountability mean? You know, what does that mean if you are being held accountable to the work that you're supposed to be doing? And what I said is that, well, first of all, your teacher should have explained some things to you, but I'll give you a quick overall summary. In elementary school, there's going to be weekly required assignments, and your teachers are going to give you a checklist, a calendar, a schedule, some things to kind of keep you on track. In that, typically our elementary students aren't given letter grades, they're given progress reports. And we will truly get the measure of their progress when they get back to school, and we can kind of have a controlled environment where we assess that and address those needs. Middle school classes, you'll see most of your middle school classes give students either points or letter grades for their assignments. Most is going to be on participation and progress, but you will see some accountability based into that. If you have 4th and 5th graders, you'll probably see a mixture of both those things. You've probably heard a lot about a do no harm grading policy, and that is the policy that we have adopted. Some schools have adopted giving everybody an A, not reducing any grades, not giving any grades. When we rolled out our program, we had about 3 weeks to see how that kind of a model worked. And what we realized, especially as our older kids were connected, if it didn't count for a grade, it didn't get done. And I feel that we harm our students by not having accountability to them. But at the same time, it's on us to know where the kids are and what they. So as we start giving these grades or what have you for your students' progress, it's really important for you to communicate with your child's teacher if those grades aren't having the desired effect. Because grades are, especially in a TK through 8 environment, are not the end. There are means to an end, but not the end itself. And what I mean by that is that we want those grades to measure progress and motivate students to do better, but they're not designed to be a punishment or to discriminate or to disadvantage or to create mental distress. And so if your child in these types of circumstances is having those effects, communicate with us. I was telling you about the supportiveness that we've had with the board, and when we talked a little bit about grades, the board is supportive of our decision to hold kids accountable, but have flexibility in grading. And so when we get to the end, you'll probably see some grades on third trimester report cards that will be a credit or no mark grade. What a credit or no mark means is that kids get credit for the work that they've done and they move on, and whatever the next grade is and the next challenge and so forth. The no mark means that they have a chance to fix it. And so we're not going to try to punish kids for things that are beyond their control. Teachers also have the opportunity to revert those grades back. As I mentioned in our last coffee with the principal, we only had 10 school days of the third trimester. So for most of our middle schoolers, there weren't any grades or any significant grades to revert back to. But if you're feeling like the grades aren't having the response to measure progress or to motivate your child, talk to your child's teacher about it. They have a lot of flexibility in how they do that. And like I said, they are not the end all be all. They help us monitor and help us motivate. So while the distance learning program wasn't our first choice, it does create some opportunities for your child to have some individualization and have some special treatment. So if your child needs some things, a challenge, or extra help, some flexibility on the grading, talk to your child's teacher and let them know. That's kind of the stuff that I wanted to roll out with you. I did have a couple questions that came in, and one of the questions that came in, and I just got a little comment that things were glitching up a little bit. Can you hear me? Raise your hand. Is everything okay? All right. I do have 4 distance learners at my house, so we do tend to bang the internet a little bit. I had a question about field trip money, and there was some folks that had put forth some field trip money, and they wanted to say, hey, if that field trip's not going to happen, do I get my money back? And the short answer is yes. The long answer is that some of those trips are going to be applied for next year. So for instance, there was some money that first graders put out to go to Legoland. Unfortunately, that trip was canceled. Our plan for that is to apply that to a second grade field trips to offset your cost for that. There were some parent chaperones that were connected to that. We'll refund the parents' money, but we're looking to kind of forward that and apply it. In other cases, like 5th grade BizTown was pretty expensive. We are working with BizTown to try to schedule that for the fall. A lot of ifs that go on there, whether we can do it and how they can schedule it, but the plan for that is to try to schedule that field trip. So we have a few things that don't fall in that model. And then we do have some families that if you paid for a field trip and you're not going to be here next year, should get their money back. So contact me or Ms. Brown if you have a special circumstance, but that kind of answers questions about field trips. Similarly, folks that are enrolled in our kids club or preschool, we are not charging you for days, obviously, that your kids aren't there. So many of those have prepay options. So if you've prepaid for kids club or preschool, and your child did not attend those days, we'll prorate that money and get it back to you. So if you haven't received that should be coming to you shortly. Mrs. Brown in the office is working through that. So if you have specific questions, she can help you. We did have a question about registration. Can my kindergartner register now for next year? The answer is yes. We're updating our online portal to facilitate online registration of both kindergarten and preschool. If you're interested in a kindergarten or preschool enrollment, let us know and we will help you get started with that. Mrs. Wang would be the one to talk to, but if you contact me, I can get you connected up with her. And I was looking at, I don't see any additional questions. You all have the ability to unmute or put a question in the chat box. Does anyone have any questions or anything they would like to share? Going through the screen a little bit. I don't see too much. So I don't see anything coming in. So I'll just kind of summarize it this way. I know that this is a really, really tough time for you and a tough time for your family. I'm hopeful that we, at least on the school side, are able to find a balance with you and your home of being supportive to your kids' academic needs, but understanding of your kids' emotional needs and of your family's challenges. So if we're missing the mark a little bit on anything, let us know. Unlike a school environment where we can usually tell if we're not doing what we need to do, home environment's a lot more challenging. So let us know if there's some things that are getting in the way of your learning or your child's learning. Let me know. There is a question that came in. What about middle school electives? My son insists it's optional. What's your take? Yes, oftentimes middle schoolers are not overly truthful, but in that case they are. When we look at our middle school electives, what we're looking at doing is providing optional enrichment experiences, but not trying to pile on things that might not be core necessary, meaning we have said that your math and your literature and your sciences and your core subjects, those are the ones that we're holding directly accountable. For the middle school electives, there's a lot of offerings in middle school electives, and what's happening right now is Mrs. Reed Smith is putting out information that students that want to be involved in her VAPA, even if they weren't involved in VAPA before, can be. Mrs. Priest is opening up a coding class. Mrs. Romero is assisting students with foreign language. And while she's the Spanish teacher, she understands the Duolingo program fairly well. So if you're interested in learning a foreign language, and Miss Mallory is also looking at teaching online ASL, American Sign Language. So if you have a middle schooler, you'll see in their grade book most likely a credit listed so that they'll get credit for that course and move on for what they've done, but they won't be required to continue in that, but there will be optional things that are connected. Teachers are still, over these last couple months of school, looking for ways to connect and engage without overwhelming. So if there's an elective type thing that you're interested in, we can either point you to a person or potentially a resource. So if that comes up, let us know. Any update on 8th grade promotion? Just a little bit, probably not too much more than I met with all the other superintendents in the county, very similar situation as this, and we talked about promotion because a lot of the grading policies and a lot of the considerations right now are rightfully being done with seniors and 8th graders in mind. And really what they're looking at is things like, you had a kid, you take San Pasqual that have been there 9 years, they've been looking forward to all these great things that connect to the end of their 8th grade year, and this social distancing thing is getting in the way. What we're looking at right now is the best possibility that we're looking at is that social distancing requirements will be lessened to the point that we can hold some sort of a ceremony for these kids. If so, probably going to limit the number of visitors and that kind of stuff, but we're looking at that as our first best case scenario. If it's not possible to bring them together, we are looking at options to honor them virtually, honor them through some sort of a virtual ceremony followed up by a physical one when it is safe to do so. We will see a little bit, our local high schools graduate and promote about a week before we do, so we'll get a little playbook as to what some possibilities may be. But what I've told people is I don't know how and I don't know when, but we will have a ceremony of some sort to honor our 8th graders. Looking at our questions again, can AR tests be open through the summer so we can keep kids motivated to read and test? The answer to that is yes. Our plan right now is, like I said, if we can get some face-to-face instruction and remediation and teaching over the summer, that's preferable. But our backup plan is if there's resources that are serving your kids well, that we make them available to you over the summer. So yeah, plan on the AR tests being opened up over the summer. Will these electives be offered to 4th and 5th graders? That's one, let me check on that with our teachers. I think they can, depending on capacity. So I think they can, depending on capacity. But I'll check with them. Let me put a little note to their look.
Mark, Miss Mallory's commenting and saying that they're looking into it and they're going to send information. Some will and some won't.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. I think part of it is really one of the benefits. And like I said, I don't like to tout how wonderful distance learning is, but some of the benefits are flexibility and capacity. So hopefully we'll be able to open that up. But yeah, we'll check in with the teachers on that. There's a question that says, sorry I missed it earlier, but some people have received checks for the 8th grade trip. We haven't yet. Have you heard details on this? Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about that. The 8th grade trip is, it's not a school-sponsored trip, but it is comes through the school. I actually spoke with the owner of the company and expressed my dismay to the company that their options really were to withhold monies from families who weren't going on the trip. And the 3 options that were provided were to go in the summer, which is unlikely and unreasonable, to go after their freshman year in high school, which again is not the 8th grade trip, or to cancel your trip and they were going to hold back about $300 per person. I shared with him that they should not be holding back money for a trip that they cannot and will not provide. But his take was that he needed to do it to remain financially sustainable, and that was his business decision. So what I've heard is that some people, and this was the tack that I took, I have some 8th graders, we requested our refund and we received a refund of everything short $300 a ticket. So like I said, it was something that I'm very disappointed in. I don't think it was the right decision, but from what I understand, and I don't have limited knowledge of others, is those that have requested a refund have received the money that they paid short, $250 deposit and about a $50 some sort of a credit card charge. So that's what I'm hearing so far. But like I said, it's a disappointing result. We've had a good experience with them over the years, and we're just not pleased with how they're handling this situation. Let me see here. We did have a question if we had a question if a child more social or emotional supports, what should they do? Reach out to me and I'll get you connected to our specialists. We would expect that kids would need that kind of support right now. It's a very difficult time. Kids do, especially middle school kids, get strength from their peers, and to be disconnected from peers and disconnected from normal routines, it's a real challenge. And so I mentioned last week, we just entered into an agreement with referral for outside referral services that match up folks to either insurances or not. But we do have a lot of trained folks that are trained in helping kids. We have counselors, we have behavior therapists, we have special education teachers who are trained to do this very thing. So if you do have some needs, let me know and we can definitely connect you up with that. How do current 5th graders get signed up for middle school activities, sports, choir, BAPA, and so forth? So let me kind of explain that to you. There's a little distinction between some of those. The sports would happen in the fall when we come back. If things go like they have in the past, we have about 6 seasons during the course of the year, and students would try out for those. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders would try out for those sports. So that's how the sport connection would go. The choir, there are some tryouts at the very beginning of their 6th grade year. So if you had a 5th part of choir, choir is an after-school event, and so students would try out for choir at the beginning of their 6th grade year. And then currently, and we'll wait to see if this is still the model that we have, because we maybe changed some things up a little bit based on our reentry plan. BAPA has been a middle school elective, and so students that were interested in BAPA have contacted Mrs. Reed-Smith directly, and she has filled out her class as a year-long elective class. What I would suggest, if you have a 5th grader that is interested in BAPA, is have them reach out to Mrs. Reed-Smith now, because there may be a possibility that they can tag in to the virtual part of it and see if that's a good fit for them now. So I would suggest an email to Ms. Reed-Smith, and if you need help getting connected to her, please let me know and I can get you connected to Ms. Reed-Smith. Looking to see if we have other questions. I don't see any coming in. If anybody wants to ask one, they're free to unmute themselves or put it in the chat box. Anything else that I can help you guys with today? All right. So thank you very much for joining today. Like I said, we really appreciate all that you are doing to support your kids and to support our program. As I mentioned before, and I'll keep saying this throughout, if you have any questions about how your kid or suggestions on how to do that, let us know. And then there was a quick reminder about a yearbook. So there'll be an email that comes out later today. PTO is putting the yearbook together. So a quick email coming out later today to tell you not only how to submit pictures for it, but how to order it. And like I said, they're working on virtual signatures and some cool stuff for that. So thank you all very much for joining us today. If you have folks that missed it, we'll get some note summary and put this up in our YouTube account. Any questions, or if you guys have any private stuff you need to share with me, feel free to email. But thank you again. It's good to see you guys all, and please stay safe. Hope to see you in person soon. Bye.